So we've had quite a few things happen recently in the MMA world, and in today's video, I'm going to be reacting and giving my thoughts to several different things. There was this clip that went absolutely viral, and that was Alex Pereira knocking out his sparring partner. So many people were sending me this video, man, sending me this clip, asking for my thoughts, so I figured I would include it in today's video, give my thoughts and my reaction to that, but more so the gist of this video, we're going to be talking about Paddy Pimblett and his plans that he has laid out for 2026 and Arman Tsarukyan. He did an interview with ESPN MMA with Brett Okamoto, and he really kind of outlined what we're looking at here with the UFC's plans regarding Paddy Pimblett and Ilia Topuria. So I thought it was very interesting to hear Arman's perspective on this. And then we're going to talk about what could be next for Arman Tsarukyan, because we're going to take a look at the lightweight rankings. And man, when you look around, Arman Tsarukyan is in a very funky situation, man. So just weirdness going on in the lightweight division. Then Michael Chandler will briefly touch on this. He's saying that he is actually going to be fighting Conor McGregor at the White House in June. So we'll discuss that briefly. And then Diego Lopes's tweet. This really ticked me off, man. This really ticked me off. We know that he just recently got announced that he is going to be fighting Alexander Volkanovski in an undeserved rematch at UFC 325. I mean, it's just crazy, man. Listen, I like Diego Lopes, but we all know that there were more deserving contenders right now, considering Diego just fought him. I know he's coming off of an impressive KO over John Silva, but the fact that he's getting thrown right back in there against Volkanovski, I don't know, man. I feel like it's a disgrace. And then also, look, no one's complaining that Paddy Pimblett is fighting Justin Gaethje. At least I don't think so, right? I mean, it's a banger matchup. It's a great fight. But it's the fact that you have two guys in the weight class fighting for the interim title, to where Dana says the winner of that is going to be unifying, obviously, against, Ilia Topuria. And you're leaving out the next best guy outside of Ilia in the weight class, and Arman Tsarukyan, who's the clear-cut number one guy. He's being left out of the interim title fight. So to me, just kind of a clown show with these announcements from the UFC for 324, 325. We'll kind of discuss it throughout this video. I'll go ahead and link a video down below to where I gave my initial reactions to Dana's announcements. So, I don't know, man. Just some craziness going on. But first, we're going to take a look at Poatan Pereira's KO over his sparring partner. I'm going to react and give my thoughts. Let's hop into it. Going hard to the body. Boom. Oh. Oh. Mystery left hook, man. Why are y'all surprised? Listen, man, everybody, there's so many different reactions that I've been seeing out there. Like, people are going off on Poatan, saying what a bad sparring partner he is and all these different things. Dude, there's clearly, to me, something that went on here for this to happen, right? And if you watch a lot of the different footage that was floating around, Poatan Pereira was going feathers to the head and going very hard to the body, which normally, if someone is significantly better than the other in sparring, like, you're not going to be throwing big shots upstairs, man. Like, you're going to be ripping to the body, right? And if you are doing leg kicks and stuff, you're going to be throwing hard to the legs, but it's going to be feathers to the head, right? Especially just in sparring in general, but especially when someone is significantly better than the other, right? And we see sparring footage all the time of Poatan, man, to where he's having these good back and forths with guys, but those are high-level fighters. When he's going in there with people that aren't nearly on his level, he's not bullying people around and beating the heck out of people. This was something new, because I've been watching Poatan for a long time, man, and I've seen many different videos of him out there sparring. I've seen him do seminars where he's just play sparring with people, man. To have the whole gym standing around with their phones out and to get reactions from the people in the background. And I told y'all, all this kind of stuff. It is very clear that this guy was probably asking for this, man. He probably challenged Poatan. He's like, I'm going to go out there and show him. He probably couldn't wait to get in here and spar Poatan. Was probably amping it up all week, saying that he's going to go out there spar with Poatan and he wants to try to knock him out. Dude, there's people out there with some wild egos, man. Wild egos. Right, and they hear pro fighters coming into town, especially a famous fighter who's known for being one of the most ferocious KO artists in the history of combat sports. There's dumb people out there with crazy egos, man. So I would love some full context on, why this happened, but to have the whole gym standing around basically cheering for Poatan to beat this guy up, Clearly there's more to the story, man. And Poatan Pereira, like I've said, there's been numerous videos out there of him sparring, man, where he's going hard with people that are high level, and he's going with people that aren't high level. He's not, knocking them out, right? And ideally, should you knock somebody out like that? No. Right? Because again, we're not talking about submitting somebody on the ground, choking them out cold, whatever. We're talking about getting hit to the head, man, right? And Poatan Pereira, to me, this wasn't even 100% left hook. It didn't look like it, right? He holds his hands low. The other guy he didn't look very good, right? I don't know if he's a fighter, trains. I'm sure he trains. I don't know if he's a pro fighter or whatever, but he's very low level, right? If you watch the other sparring, his shots are slow. He's not even extending on his shots, wasn't committing to anything. And the telltale sign, Poatan was beating him up to the body, was touching him upstairs, wasn't even throwing that hard, to the head. And then he just throws just kind of a whippy, what I like to call mystery left hook because his hands are so low. You want to watch a guy on how to throw a perfect left hook that's real sneaky. Poatan is the guy, man. That thing just loops right around. And to me, it looked like it was like 50%. Didn't even look like he was throwing 100%. And the shots that you don't see coming, which clearly the guy didn't see it. The hands are low. Poatan sneaks it around the guard. We see it all the time. That was nasty, man. So again, when you're in the gym, you don't want to be putting miles on the brain. Clearly, to me, the reaction of everybody around kind of paints a different picture than what the headlines are trying to tell you. Alex Pereira knocked out his sparring partner with a brutal left hook. Yeah, it was a brutal left hand here. But at the end of the day, there's got to be more to the story, man. I'm sure this guy challenged Pereira that was like, I'm going to go in here and go toe-to-toe and spar hard with him. I don't know that Poatan was trying to knock this guy out, man. It was a shot he didn't see coming. Looked like he barely kind of turned into the left hook. And when you hit that damn hard, things can happen, man. We saw Poatan moving around, sparring hard with Rebellis de Spain, at the same gym here. So I don't know, man. I feel like people are reading far too into this. At the end of the day, when you are so much better than somebody like that, you really shouldn't be knocking him out. But again, I don't know the full context. I'm going off of what I see here. And to see that many people, they have a guy in there kind of reffing, keeping an eye on it, and have that many people reacting the way they did to this guy, doesn't seem like too many people in there are too fond of the guy that Poatan knocked out. And to see him kind of celebrating and running around like that, I feel like just kind of answers this whole thing for itself. So to me, stop making a big deal out of this, man. We've seen Poatan sparring before, and this isn't the kind of stuff that you usually see. There's more to the story that is being left out here, in my opinion. I'm sure the guy challenged him. All right, now let's talk about Paddy Pimblett. So Paddy Pimblett wants to win the interim title, beat Ilia Topuria, and defend the title against Arman Tsarukyan in 2026. Wow. Quote, 2026 is going to be the biggest year of my life. I'm coming for that interim title. Then I'll be making it undisputed title when I come out and beat Ilia Topuria up. Then little posh boy Arman, if he manages to fight in that time because I like sitting out and saying he's got a sore back, I'll punch his head in as well, end of quote. Listen, man, one thing about Paddy Pimblett that you can't deny, this guy knows how to market himself. He talks a big game, and so far, I know we can criticize the resume, right? And I've been saying for the longest time, I've been critical of Paddy Pimblett in terms of the names on the resume, right? But at the end of the day, nobody's really beaten Michael Chandler like that, right? And I picked Paddy Pimblett to go out there and finish Michael Chandler. I thought he'd sub him, but to go out there and butcher him with ground and pound and completely dominate him the way he did, I know that that's not a prime Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler's just getting after it in there wrestling with Chad Mendes, man. Michael Chandler's still, a dangerous guy and a very strong and explosive athlete. So to do that to him, I thought was incredibly impressive, right? But again, you're out there submitting Bobby Green. A washed-up Bobby Green, then a washed-up Tony Ferguson. At the end of the day, people are still going to be saying the same thing. Who the heck have you beaten Paddy Pimblett? Now you find yourself in an interim title fight, and this, to me, is just now going to be the trickle-down effect for fighters moving forward. You are going to have to start marketing yourself. You're going to have to do it. And Paddy Pimblett, to me, is kind of the perfect example of it. He's clearly someone that the UFC is trying to push. Duh. Hand-feeding him these really favorable matchups, giving him kind of slow dripping him into the rankings, and now they're giving him Justin Gaethje to where, look, Gaethje's still very dangerous. I don't think Gaethje's in his prime anymore. I feel like we can all agree there, but, those leg kicks, the power of Gaethje, it's still a dangerous fight, but at the same time, I think it's very favorable for Paddy Pimblett, man. But listen, Paddy understands, man, he knows how to market himself, man. He's out here talking, right? And that's exactly what he creates. Right now, we got some big fights with Paddy Pimblett here, right? You got Paddy Pimblett versus Ilia Topuria, Paddy Pimblett versus Arman Tsarukyan, and to me, this could just be words, or he's actually has the intention of doing this. But I like a guy that's sitting out here saying, listen, man, I'm going to go out here. I'm going to beat Justin Gaethje. Then I'm going to go out there, unify the belt, beat Ilia Topuria, and then give me Arman Tsarukyan. And that's just the cool thing to do in the lightweight division now, right? Everybody just sit around and talk crap about Arman Tsarukyan because they don't have fights booked with him. But when they do have fights booked with him, I'm sure they're still going to talk. But maybe they're not going to be saying as much because the threat of that Arman Tsarukyan brings to the table. But this, to me, I like hearing that Paddy Pimblett wants to be active, man. Again, these are just words. We're going to have to see because given what we're seeing now, the UFC, the way their schedule works, there hasn't been a ton of active champions. And I feel like, that's been because the Paramount deal has kind of been looming in the balance here. But I like the idea that Paddy Pimblett is saying that he wants 2026 to be a big year, man. And I've been saying before, listen, Paddy Pimblett gets a lot of hate. And a lot of that is when you do things like this that the UFC's doing, you throw him into an interim title fight that he probably shouldn't be getting, even though he's rattled off some nice wins. Don't think he beat Jared Gordon. Thought that was a robbery. When you go out there and you butcher Michael Chandler the way he did, and, there's kind of recycled rematches and all these different things in the lightweight division, Paddy's just kind of put himself in that position, man, to where the UFC recognizes him as being a marketable guy moving forward, and it's very clear. That is their investment. They want Paddy to go out there, beat Justin Gaethje, and I think he will. I think he subs Gaethje within the first couple rounds. Then he's going to go out there and fight Ilia Topuria, and I think that it's going to become a massive fight. So say what you will about Paddy Pimblett. This guy is getting better, man. He's young. He's getting better. His striking, while I say he's stiff as a board on the feet, fights like a scarecrow, he's got some power. He's got some power, and his ground game is nasty, man. His jiu-jitsu skills are good, and to go out there and do that to Michael Chandler, I know we've seen Chandler lose a lot in the UFC, to say the least, right? I know that Chandler hasn't had the greatest record since he's been in the UFC. He's only won a couple fights and lost most of them, but nobody's done what Paddy did to Chandler, man. Like Charles Oliveira, the fight before that, granted, Charles was dominating him and putting on a grappling masterclass, but to go out there and butcher Michael Chandler the way he did, it was wildly impressive. It was, but at the end of the day, in my opinion, Gaethje should not be getting the opportunity. Paddy Pimblett fighting for the interim belt, it should have been Paddy versus Arman, in my opinion. That's what I would have liked to have seen. But Gaethje, the UFC, in my opinion, Dana White, they kind of folded to Gaethje's demands. They're like, how can we please Gaethje? How can we make this work as well for building Paddy Pimblett? Because Paddy's already a star, but imagine he goes out here and beats Justin Gaethje, especially if he finishes him. He's going to get on the microphone, do his thing, and that's one of the big things, man. A lot of these fighters are just going to have to start taking notes. I'm not saying don't be yourself, but you see these guys that are willing to talk a big game, and we're starting to see Arman do a lot more of that, which we're going to get to. That is putting fighters in positions to where, this stuff of, I'm just a super skilled fighter, I'm not going to say much. The UFC's just not going to push you, man. And especially with this Paramount deal going in, I just don't know that the UFC is going to push those guys maybe the same as they were back in the day. I feel like that's the new theme that we're kind of seeing here. But all this sounds great. Now, at the end of the day, to go out there and beat Gaethje, I think that is very reasonable for Paddy to do. But Ilia and then Arman, could you imagine if Paddy went out there and beat all three of those guys? Doesn't happen, in my opinion. But I like to hear that he's willing to take on all comers and welcoming Arman Tsarukyan, because at the end of the day, this is not Paddy Pimblett's fault that he's not fighting Arman. It's not. It's the UFC's decision. I'm sure the UFC's kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes here, kind of, pulling the strings, making this whole thing kind of orchestrate and look the way it is. Maybe the UFC knows what they're doing in terms of causing outrage, because boy, have they gotten it since announcing this fight. But I always like to hear a guy wants to be active. I think it's going to be a big 2026, man, for Paddy Pimblett, because I think he beats Gaethje, goes out there, fights Ilia Topuria. I think he gets knocked out in that fight. But if he could pull off the upset, because again, this would be a very inactive Ilia. Ilia just went out there at 317, knocked out Charles in the first round, and we're not seeing this guy until mid-2026 now? It's just absolutely crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. Curious to see how this whole thing plays off. But like I said, Paddy knows how to talk. And so far, he's been talking the talk, walking the walk. And when you do that, the UFC is clearly going to reward that. But hey, man, Paddy's saying he wants to fight everybody, so got to respect it. We'll see, though, when the time comes and Arman and Ilia are the next guys up. We'll see how it all plays out, man. But okay. Let's talk about Arman Tsarukyan here, because he's talking with Brett Okamoto on ESPN MMA. I'll go ahead and link the interview down below, guys. I was actually very I was so, I don't even know the word for it. I was just not taken back by it, but man, this is interesting coming from Arman Tsarukyan, because Arman Tsarukyan says the UFC's original plan was to book Paddy versus Ilia in January. Now, before we get into kind of what he said here, that's interesting because we're hearing from a lot of different outlets, a lot of different places, right? That was kind of the rumor that was circulating was, UFC's going over to Paramount. The ESPN deal's running out, right? And to start, the new era under Paramount, you're going to want to deliver with a massive card, which the UFC is doing. I mean, they've put together a great card, even though the matchups are funky. Some of the fights that they've announced, like the main event with Gaethje and Pimblett for the interim belt. We get all that. But the point is, to start off the Paramount deal, it just felt like that was the direction the UFC was going to go, right? Ilia goes out there, starches Oliveira, Paddy comes in there, they do the face-off. It was just there, the bad blood. It's going to be a big build-up. We all understand that. That would have been a massive fight to kick off the new Paramount deal. So I truly feel that was the fight the UFC was targeting. We kept hearing all these kind of rumors going around that was the fight the UFC was going to do. It's a big fight, whether it's competitive or not. I mean, I feel like Ilia KOs Paddy pretty easily. It still has a crazy build-up, and that would be a great way to kick off the Paramount card in terms of the draw, the attraction, all those kinds of things. We get that. So to hear them, to hear Arman say that, I don't think we're really surprised by that. But here's the thing. Quote, I think this is a UFC game plan, not family issues. They want to make Paddy Pimblett a star, bring him to fight for the title with Topuria as a bigger name. They know I could beat everybody. Paddy is easy work. Justin is easy work. Ilia is easy work. Islam was hard work, but he left. So nobody is on my level in this division right now, end of quote. Okay. So a couple things to unpack here, right? So the fact that Arman says, I think this is UFC's game plan, not family issues. Like I said, kind of, in my opinion, hinting at the whole, kind of dialing up, behind the scenes, UFC pulling these strings, kind of orchestrating and kind of painting the picture that they want us to see. Because it is kind of interesting, the fact that there were those videos going around where Ilia's all kind of bobbing around. He's in Qatar, cornering his brother. And then people are questioning the fact that all this news comes out just before the announcement, right? Obviously, from what we're hearing, there's personal things going on with Ilia Topuria. So I hope everything's all right, obviously. But it's just people are questioning the timing because it is interesting, all right around UFC 324. But then you could look at it and say, well, that's the explanation for why there's going to be an interim title on the line here. But at the end of the day, man, this is wild to know that the UFC, they were sitting there and they were going to book Paddy versus Ilia. That was the goal. Arman wasn't even in the picture. In the picture. So for him to even go out there and beat Dan Hooker the way he did, it wasn't like, remember how Dana's like, this is essentially a number one contender fight, is what Dana was making it sound like. And I know Dana's known for going out there and saying these kinds of things, and because it, I guess helps build up the fight more. But a lot of the time, that doesn't even end up standing true. And that was the perfect situation of this. So there was no intention of Arman actually going out there and winning. He won that fight, but they already were going to do Ilia versus Paddy. Now, that's not to say, Arman beat Dan Hooker, so then he could have been next. But now, to me, this delays everything. And that's why there's a lot of people, and I think that's kind of what Arman is getting at here, in my opinion, is the fact that the UFC is kind of painting this picture, trying to draw everything out. And what does this do? I don't want to use the word blackball, but I'm going to say that it kind of, in a way, it just kind of leaves Arman left out in a no man's land. And to me, it's coming off as some sort of design here. It just is. The fact that you have Islam Makhachev move up to 170 pounds, which, by the way, I could not wait for that fight. We all were so looking forward to that fight. UFC 311, Arman pulls out of the fight. Moicano has to step in. That was just one of those things where we knew the UFC was not going to let it down. If you know Dana White and the UFC, man, they just aren't going to tolerate that. They are going to hold that against you, and boy, have they. And I feel like Arman is still paying for this is the repercussions still and the ripple effect from all of that. Weighs in as the backup at 317 for Ilia versus Oliveira. Goes out there, makes weight, destroys Dan Hooker within 2 rounds, which in my opinion, he was supposed to do. But by him going out there and doing that, I thought he would have been the next guy. And it's not to say they didn't do Paddy versus Ilia in January, that Arman wouldn't have been waiting in the wings. You have him ringside. He goes in there and faces off with the winner. Maybe that was the plans of the UFC. But to me, by this interim title coming on the line here, this whole thing has just gotten so murky, man, and it puts Arman in a tough position. Right, and what Arman's saying here, there was a clip going around of Ilia Topuria. Remember where he said that, don't give Paddy Arman Tsarukyan because Arman will beat him. And I believe that Ilia Topuria, right, when you're calling out Islam Makhachev, that's the best fighter in the sport. And in my opinion, the greatest of all time. But at the end of the day, if you lose to Islam if you're Ilia Topuria. There's, well, I lost to one of the greatest of all time. If you go out there and lose to Arman, that to me kind of takes away the Islam fight. So there's a lot of risk for Ilia involved there, man. So I do believe that Ilia will fight anybody. But man, I'm just telling you, the way that this whole thing is playing out, it really does feel like the UFC and the fighters in this weight class, they are very aware of the skills of Arman Tsarukyan. He's the greatest threat to all these guys. And I've been saying that. He absolutely is, and that's why they booked Paddy versus Gaethje. We knew that, at least I did, that was the fight that was probably going to be next for Paddy. It's the most winnable fight for him. You think that Paddy's going to beat Ilia? Feel like he gets knocked out. You think he's going to beat Arman? I think Arman destroys him. You think Paddy beats Oliveira? I mean, Charles is a little bit older, but given what Charles just did to Gamrot, I mean, very, very dangerous fights towards the top of the weight class. And they're trying to ensure that they do everything to get Paddy to Ilia, because at the end of the day, guys, we can say whatever we want. It's a big fight. I'm not denying that. I would look forward to Paddy versus Ilia 100% because of the buildup. It checks all the boxes. But the problem is we have a guy in Arman Tsarukyan who absolutely has earned a title opportunity, man. He absolutely has. And the fact that we have Gaethje versus Paddy for an interim title, I mean, if they had Nunes versus Harrison as the main event, which I get there would be a ton of, just that people would be going crazy if that was the headliner for the first Paramount card. And I get that. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's, the GOAT, Amanda Nunes going out there against Kayla Harrison, who's an absolute beast. It's a big fight. But at the end of the day, if that was the headliner, people would be going batshit crazy over that. So I get that, and I feel like that's why the UFC elevated this to the main event, put the interim belt on the line. Gaethje versus Paddy is a great fight. The UFC knows what they're doing, man. They absolutely know what they're doing, and we all can see what they're doing. And to me, this kind of comes off. Ilia's got the stuff going on. Like I said, I hope he can figure everything out and everything's all right, man, because, from the things that we're hearing, it sounds like it could get messy. Right? And at the end of the day, it's just very odd to me that Arman Tsarukyan is being left out of all of this, man. I don't understand why they couldn't have had Arman involved for the interim title. Paddy versus Arman for the interim belt. Gaethje always going to retire. Well, Gaethje basically got his wish. And now you don't think other fighters, like we're seeing Kamaru Usman sitting around doing that right now. Oh, I'm going to fight for the belt, or, Kamaru Usman's basically pulling a Gaethje right now, more or less. And I think Kamaru's going to fight Islam Makhachev for the belt next. Given that how we've seen the UFC kind of give in here to Gaethje, we knew that this was going to happen for Arman, man. And I said this time and time again, guys, when Arman pulled out of that fight with Islam, I was like, this is going to be bad for him. It's going to be bad for him. And at the end of the day, Arman Tsarukyan had an injury, right? And then you hear from Dana White, oh, he was going to miss weight and all these different things. And I just don't know what to believe. I don't know what to believe, but at the end of the day, you can't hold this against this guy forever, man. He's in the prime of his career. He's getting better and better. And I believe the most complete guy in the lightweight division, now that Islam is gone, is clearly Arman Tsarukyan. And I think Arman's a much bigger star, especially now, than what people want to give him credit for. And not only, maybe the UFC, like I said, I think that they're trying to paint this picture that they want. They're Arman's building up a fan base in the meantime, man, and these fights are brewing. Arman's talking a big game. Ilia's talking a big game. Paddy's talking a big game. They're taking shots at each other, especially with Paddy and Ilia kind of taunting Arman since, Arman's kind of left out of the whole thing. This is building some big fights in the lightweight division, man. So I know that we're all kind of bummed out and this and that, but at the end of the day, this is brewing and building some massive fights, dude, that are going to be, super marketable for the UFC moving forward. So Arman, he's stepping up his game with the trash talk here, man. But I think that Arman, there's a lot of what he's saying here, man. I think that there's a lot to this. Arman would beat Paddy. He would beat Justin Gaethje. And then, I think he's the greatest threat to Ilia. And Ilia is very marketable for the UFC right now. He's the best boxer in the sport. Like I've said, super entertaining. I think the UFC wants to go out there, have Paddy and Ilia fight, and then if Ilia knocks out Paddy, they'll send him up to fight Islam Makhachev. They don't want Arman ruining those plans, is kind of my take on it. I believe that is my take on it. And then you hear Paddy saying that he wants to fight Arman. That's encouraging for me because from Ilia Topuria, I know he's taking shots at Arman, and at the end of the day, if you put the contract in front of Ilia, I think he'll fight anybody. But given what we're seeing, man, I feel like Ilia Topuria understands that Arman is the greatest threat to him in this weight class. And like I said, if Arman Tsarukyan were to beat Ilia, that Islam fight, in my opinion, it goes away. And then guess who would probably get that fight himself? Maybe Arman Tsarukyan. But with the way the UFC's kind of, dealing with Arman these days, I don't think they're doing him any favors, man. So just thought this was interesting to hear from Arman and, coming out here saying these kinds of things. I just feel like the UFC and Arman, man, are just at a complete disconnect. Ever since he pulled out of 311, I'm like, this just ain't going to be good moving forward for Arman Tsarukyan. But listen, man, I'm excited for what we got ahead in the lightweight division. All right. Here we go. Arman Tsarukyan is Paddy Pimblett's #1 hater. Quote, I hope Justin gonna beat his ass. I would just maul Paddy's face on the ground with my elbows. I'm never gonna go for the choke. I'm gonna just elbow him all day. Justin, if you need help, let me know. That bullshit guy, I hate him. He's such a bitch. If I see Paddy, I'd like to slap him. Listen, man, I was just saying this throughout this video, especially in the beginning, guys. Listen, Arman Tsarukyan is really starting to build himself. He really is. And I know that we can sit out here and say, got perfect example, Lerone Murphy, right? Mobstar Evloev. Two super skilled guys that are left out of the title shot opportunity at featherweight because Diego got it. If you take Lerone Murphy and Mobstar, and with their skills, what they bring to the table and what they're doing, if they ramped up the trash talk like what Arman is doing right now, do we think that they may be in a different situation? I'm not saying guaranteed, but I feel like the UFC would be addressing those guys, and the plans for them moving forward could be quite different. They could be quite different. Now, we don't want a bunch of fake WWE characters out there saying just a bunch of whatever, but when you get Arman Tsarukyan here, I think he's starting to understand the game, man. And if you want my honest take, I think him hanging around Khamzat Chimaev, I wouldn't be surprised if a good friend of mine, Mr. Chimaev, wasn't sitting around saying, brother, you need to vamp up trash talk. Like, I really believe that Khamzat and even Arman, I know Arman's always had some slick comments and things to say. To me, we've seen a clear turn with Arman Tsarukyan in the way that he's approaching these fights, man. I think he's starting to understand the game. He's understanding the game that when you go out there and you get these big wins, sometimes that isn't enough, especially nowadays with the whole Paramount deal going on. We know the UFC is going to try to appeal to the casual eye, in my opinion, more than ever. So if you're going to go out there, you're going to talk a big game, we're going to have clips like this going around. Arman Tsarukyan, I feel like, maybe he can get back into the UFC's good graces, right? And he's hoping that Justin can go out there and beat Paddy Pimblett because he didn't like Paddy, right? A lot of people don't like, what the fuck are you talking about, lad? You do fucking nothing. Paddy Pimblett's just he's just pissing everybody off, man. And now that he's getting this opportunity, right, I think he's looked at as the spoiled brat of the division. And he's ticking these guys off, man. He would just love to maul Paddy's face on the ground with his elbow. See, this is the kind of talk to gets fans going, gets people going. And that's I don't know if you guys have noticed this, man. Like, Arman Tsarukyan goes out there. He's had some slick things to say. I want to fight for the title, right? He's had some slick things to say. But I feel like Arman Tsarukyan is really starting to tap into that marketing game and understanding that if I kind of talk a big game and I go out here and kind of put my name in the hat and start going out here and putting on these impressive performances, this is how you get big fights, man. We've seen throughout the UFC career, if you could go out there, win fights, you could talk a big game and create these narratives and these storylines. I think Arman's starting to tap into that, man. I think he is. You saw him go out there, again, not the smartest thing, trying to headbutt Dan Hooker at the ceremonial weigh-ins because, again, with a headbutt, you can split somebody open. That can lead to bad things, obviously, and the fight getting canceled, all of that. But Arman Tsarukyan's getting the game, man. All those little things, the shoving at the weigh-ins, talking some smack, that is how you get to kind of level up above other people. And prime example, guys like Pimblett. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying I feel like other fighters are going to start taking note moving forward, and they're going to look to kind of apply similar game plans, man. But to hear Arman Tsarukyan talking like this, you can't tell me, man. There's Arman Tsarukyan. It's the trio here. You got Ilia, Paddy, and Arman that all have massive fights with each other brewing, man. So the lightweight division, while it's getting a little drawn out, a little bit stale, people are going to blame that a little bit on Arman for pulling out of the fight with Islam. That kind of, messed things up a little bit per se. Again, not Arman's fault. But it's just kind of, it's turned the division into an interesting time, man, because I feel like we have all these massive fights. I just hope they happen. Like I said, I thought Arman versus Ilia is the fight to make right now. But we got some big fights ahead, man. And it just leaves Arman in kind of a weird place, man, because, he's saying that he wants to fight Max Holloway for the BMF title. Now, we've heard rumblings. I think it was the UFC Brazil page. They posted that, it was going to be Holloway versus, Oliveira. They had like some announcement like it was going to be for UFC 324. And then I think Charles is out there saying it's going to happen this year. We both want the fight. So I don't that to me is the matchup that is going to happen next. When? We don't know. There's been a lot of, different, rumors and stuff going around there. So we understand that Holloway versus Oliveira is probably the fight next. That's probably the fight next, right? They both want the fight. It's a big fight. I think the UFC is going to book it. And then here's what Arman has to say. It's a business. At the end of the day, I have the same goal. Everybody knows that I will beat everybody, and it's just a matter of time. I hope they give me the BMF title at least. What are they going to give me? Who do we have in our division to fight if it's not Holloway? Listen, they're not going to give Arman Tsarukyan a BMF title fight. At least I don't think, right? Because when you think of the BMF criteria, I don't know that they fit Arman into the category, right? Because with the BMF, we're talking two guys. It's basically a gentleman's agreement to go in there and just basically have a striking battle. That's what it is. Go in there, deliver a banger. That's pretty much what the BMF title fight is. And I understand, people getting frustrated about the BMF belt, saying it's gimmicky, WWE-like. To me, I don't read into all that. I just go, okay, BMF belt, striker's delight pretty much. We're going to get a war on the feet, or at least a back and forth on the feet. That's how I look at it. And Arman Tsarukyan, while I think he's capable of doing that, that wouldn't be wise in order to go out there and win a fight, especially when the UFC, it seems like they're just waiting for Arman to slip up. Arman's going to want to go out there and utilize his best asset, which is the wrestling. They're not putting him in a BMF title fight. They're just not. If they're not giving him an interim title fight against a Gaethje or a Paddy Pimblett, they're not giving him a BMF title fight against Max Holloway, at least in my opinion. And the crazy thing is, you could make an argument saying that, well, Max Holloway versus Arman Tsarukyan, that should be the interim lightweight title fight and determining who fights Ilia next. So both guys have crazy resumes. So it's just very interesting what's going on in the lightweight division right now. So while people are saying, man, this division used to be so loaded, man, and it's kind of taken a back step, I kind of disagree, man. The more I've thought about it, like I understand disgrace, Pimblett, Gaethje, interim belt. I get it. Arman should be a part of it. But all the narratives and the storylines and all these different things that are brewing, man, we got a pretty wild lightweight division going on the more you think about it. And then if Holloway and Oliveira happens, whoever wins that fight, if Max Holloway goes out there and puts on an impressive showing against Oliveira, I can just see, guys, I can see the stars aligning to where Arman is just literally basically getting blackballed from the division. Think about it. I just thought of this right now as I'm recording. Imagine Paddy beats Gaethje, right? Paddy goes out there and fights Ilia. Say Ilia knocks out Paddy Pimblett. Well, Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira are probably going to fight before Ilia returns, and say Max Holloway goes out there and stunts on Oliveira to win. You mean to tell me that Max Holloway, who's beaten Gaethje, Poirier, and now Oliveira in the weight class, they're not going to try to throw him in there for a built-up rematch against Ilia? This is just not looking good for Arman the more I think about it, man. It just isn't. It just isn't at every angle, and this is another route that I thought of here, man, and it just feels like the UFC is creating this web almost to just kind of make this route incredibly difficult for Arman Tsarukyan to get to the title. But in my opinion, no way in hell he gets a BMF title fight. This would be a great fight, Holloway versus Arman, but given what the UFC looks for the BMF title, I don't think that this fits the criteria of what they're looking for from the business angle. But so this is where things get interesting, man. We were just talking about it a little bit. Arman is in a tough spot here. Here's the top 10 right now as of Monday, December 1st, right? Because I know the UFC, I think, updates the rankings on Tuesday. I believe it is. Look at the lightweight division right now. Ilia Topuria out for personal reasons, right? He's going to be fighting the winner of Gaethje and Pimblett. So that's 4 and 5. Arman Tsarukyan sitting at 1. How crazy is this, man? That we have an elite guy in the prime of his career with essentially only one loss in his UFC career to Islam years ago. That was it. And who's the greatest lightweight, in my opinion, between Khabib and Islam? I think Islam, with the resume put together with the title defenses, I think it's Islam. That is his only loss, and that was a pretty competitive fight. Even though Islam clearly won, I'm saying it, he gave Islam fits. And that's why we were so excited for the rematch. He's sitting here at number 1, coming off of wins over Charles Oliveira and easily dominating Dan Hooker, and he's just sitting in no man's land at number 1. Like, this is crazy, man. And I feel like this isn't just going to be Arman. I feel like this is almost going to be the new model for the UFC. You hear fighters say they don't really look at the rankings anymore. Could it be any more evident now? We have an elite guy in the prime of his career who's consistently getting better, sitting at number 1. And again, people are saying, well, he lost to Gamrot, man. That was a robbery. I've said time and time again that fight was a robbery. Absolute robbery. Sitting at number 1, elite in the prime of his career, and he's sitting in no man's land. What's Arman supposed to do here? Presumably, we have 2 and 3 booked, which is Oliveira versus Holloway. Gaethje Pimblett is booked. He just beat Dan Hooker, lost to Mateusz Gamrot. Gamrot just lost to Oliveira. Fiziev just lost to Gaethje. Got gifted a second opportunity against Gaethje and lost. Right, came off a nice win over Bahamondes, but still lost to Gaethje. You can't keep throwing Fiziev, top 5 guys over and over. Moicano, no way. Not even close to the caliber of a top 5 fighter. So you essentially have one fight available for Arman Tsarukyan if he's presumably staying around in the lightweight division. And that's either he sits out and basically waits to see how this whole thing plays out, to where we're looking at Arman Tsarukyan maybe coming back to fight, whether it's a Paddy or an Ilia or a Gaethje or however the whole thing plays out, at the end of 2026. If we're lucky at that point, guys. Remember, fighting is crazy. People are just like, oh, well, Gaethje and Paddy will go out there and they'll fight in January and they'll turn around and fight a couple months later. And it's the fight game, man. Anything can happen. You got to get through a whole training camp. You got to get through the weight cut. You got to get into the fight and come out basically scot-free with no injuries. Or if you do have some bumps and bruises, things that heal up pretty quickly. So barring no crazy injuries, it's a crazy situation. So to say that Arman, well, he'll just sit on the sideline. I mean, this is a guy that was out for what, like 2 years? Fought at UFC 300, right? Beat Charles Oliveira, and we didn't see him return until just now at UFC Qatar, basically a few weeks ago, to beat Dan Hooker. Because he was supposed to fight at 311. We know he pulled out of the fight. I understand that. But basically from being in the octagon at UFC 300 to now, fighting Dan Hooker, it's just crazy. It's just absolutely crazy, man. And I feel like Arman Tsarukyan's in no man's land. He's 100% in no man's land. And to me, I wouldn't be shocked if the UFC offers him Benoit Saint-Denis. They don't sit here and go, Arman, we're going to give you Benoit Saint-Denis. And if not, then you're going to sit on the sidelines. And then also, if he turns that down saying, no, I want the next title fight, we know how the UFC plays with that game. They're going to sit there and go, oh, well, Benoit, which I don't think Benoit would beat Arman, but if he did, they would give Benoit the next title shot, I think, or they'd throw him into the conversation. And like I said, I think Holloway versus, Oliveira, I would favor Holloway in that fight. You mean to tell me that if Max doesn't go out there, who the UFC absolutely loves, with that BMF belt, he doesn't go out there and beat Oliveira, and then that's beating Gaethje, Poirier, and Holloway all recently at 155 pounds. You mean to tell me that they wouldn't throw him into a 155-pound title fight over Arman? I think they would, man. Arman is in a really, really rough spot, and I'm telling you right now, Gamrot's coming off of the loss to Oliveira. If he didn't, they would be offering, I think, Arman that Gamrot fight once again, which was an absolute insult to Arman Tsarukyan. And again, they're probably like, come get some payback here. I could hear the UFC, brass now trying to kind of gaslight him. Yeah, come get your payback, man, hoping, that he'll lose or something. It's just crazy, man, with the way that this whole thing works. Absolutely crazy. Who's that leave? Who's it leave? Benoit Saint-Denis coming off of a nice victory, right? Beat Mauricio Rufy, beat Kyle Prepolak before that, and then went out there and starched Benny Dariush in round number 1. I could see the UFC offering Benoit Saint-Denis, Arman Tsarukyan. I could see that next. Given the way that the top of the division is booked, wouldn't be shocked if they offer Arman that fight next. And to be honest, Arman takes that fight. I mean, I think he beats Benoit Saint-Denis, so it'd be a way for him to stay active. I'm just saying, man, this just isn't looking good, guys. It's not looking good, man, for Arman Tsarukyan, given the landscape of this division. And like a lot of people are saying, this feels like it's something that could be intentional by the UFC, which is, I think, what Arman is kind of getting at in a way. They're trying to make Paddy a bigger star, put him in, the big spotlight of the new Paramount deal. Hopefully he goes out there and beats Gaethje is probably what the UFC is hoping for. It works out because Gaethje's like, I'll retire, unless I get a title fight. And then here we go, 2-time interim belt challenger, Justin Gaethje. Just crazy, man. Absolutely crazy what is going on for Arman Tsarukyan. I just think it's a disgrace by the UFC. A guy in the prime of his career, one of the most elite and well-rounded lightweights I think that we've ever seen. It's absolutely crazy, man. I wouldn't even be shocked if Arman at some point just looks to move up to welterweight or something, given the way that, this weight class is going to play out. And I think a lot of people are going to start looking at Arman as the uncrowned champion because a lot of people are, basically nobody seems to be excited to have to deal with the problem that is Arman Tsarukyan. Craziness, man. All right, we got 2 more things. We're going to talk about Chandler, then we'll talk about Diego. Chandler got a W. Hey, man, Michael Chandler's back in the win column. Went out there and wrestled, Chad Mendes. Had some interesting things going on, just like every other Michael Chandler fight. Always some hairy moments, some cheap shots, not really cheap shots, but there's always something, always some controversy with fouls and all that kind of stuff in a Chandler, fight, whatever the heck he's a part of. And he goes out there and beats Chad Mendes in a wrestling match. So Chandler out here getting a W for the first time in quite some time. But he recently says he believes the fight with Conor McGregor will finally happen in June 2026 at the White House. Quote, the fight's already happening. He's brought in guys to his training camp to mimic my style. I'll fight Conor, June, South Lawn, White House. God bless. End of quote. This has just been, listen, for Michael Chandler, right? I've watched Michael Chandler for pretty much his entire career. All the way back when he first came into Bellator, right? Wrestled at Mizzou, comes into Bellator. And I've always said, Michael Chandler, he's always in these fun fights, man. It's like must-see TV every single time Michael Chandler fights. Comes into the UFC, knocks out Dan Hooker in his first fight, almost KOs Oliveira in the vacant title fight to win the belt. And it just seems like it's been one bad, slip up for Chandler after another. And the biggest mistake of his career was licking Conor McGregor's feet and waiting around all that time for a Conor McGregor fight. And here he still is in 2025 as we're heading into 2026, essentially begging and hoping that he gets the Conor fight. And I know a lot of people, just give him the damn fight, man. This guy's been sitting around licking Conor McGregor's feet all this time. And, McGregor was playing these games, man, and he knows that Michael Chandler has this pathetic energy when it comes to fighting him. So McGregor just keeps, just kind of toying around with Michael Chandler. And again, Conor McGregor, Mr. Unreliable, keeps locking in and all these different. Conor McGregor, I don't know, man. You guys know how I feel about Conor McGregor at this point. I feel like he's disgusting. He's a disgrace, man. And he's got all this money, all this different stuff. Was supposed to fight Chandler at, what was it, 303, pulled out of the fight. That press conference fell apart. It was an injury. It was this, it was that. And Conor McGregor's doing all sorts of, horrible things outside of the octagon. He's got all these different issues that are following him and keep popping up. So you can't even trust that this guy's even going to make it to the octagon. I don't even care to see Conor fight anymore, man. People are still living in the past. I mean, Michael Chandler's washed. McGregor is washed. Who cares to see this fight, in my opinion? That's how I feel about it. I know people still get excited because Conor's a big name, but I would hope Chandler could go out there and knock out Conor McGregor. But given what we've seen from Chandler, he's got no fight IQ. Good wrestling, never uses it. Solid ground and pound, hardly ever uses it. And then you hear, Conor's mimicking my style. There's a lot of guys that fight like Chandler. Just fight dumb, don't use their wrestling, and go out there and swing big looping shots. Not hard to prepare for Chandler. I could prepare for Michael Chandler right now. I know he's going to be super explosive early. Right? He's not going to utilize his wrestling. It's just, I don't know, man. Michael Chandler sitting here continuing to lick the feet of McGregor is crazy. And hopefully he does get this fight because he's been embarrassed. He just keeps getting embarrassed, and he's just embarrassed himself for so long throughout this process, man. He really has. And it's been kind of a shame, to see this whole thing for Michael Chandler, man. It was just such a mistake waiting out like that. And to see how this all has played out for Chandler since coming into the UFC again. Amazing fights, must-see TV. The whole Conor McGregor saga with him has been literally pathetic, man. It's been absolutely pathetic. You just got to keep it real. It's been pathetic, and I don't even want to see Conor fight again. I don't even think he should, to be honest with you. So he'll be a shell of himself. Chandler's a shell of himself, but Chandler, to me, still has more in the tank than a guy like Conor who's not. Conor literally is 1 foot. He's damn near 2 feet out of the fight game. He's 1 3/4 out. His one toe, that little pinky toe, is dabbling still into the fight game. I don't like guys that are in and out and trying to come back and fight. Like Michael Chandler, at least, is a guy that's always consistently training. So hopefully Chandler beats his ass. I feel like Chandler will have a lot of people behind him. I hope he beats Conor McGregor's ass. And we'll see if this all plays out. Again, I'm not trusting anything until Conor McGregor actually gets in the octagon and the fight actually starts, because it just has been one thing after another with Conor McGregor. Who even knows if he makes it to the octagon given that. So hopefully it works out for Chandler. Been pathetic to watch this whole thing unfold. All right, last but not least, this to me really ticked me off. Really ticked me off. And I see the blue check mark here next to Diego Lopes. And again, I know that just means you got a premium account, verified, whatever, on X. And there's so many, fan accounts, whatever, fake accounts of fighters. Right? I know there was the RDR one going around. So I believe that this is actually Diego Lopes, right? This was, championship rounds that posted this. Diego Lopes responds to the critics after he got another title shot against Volk. And then this is what, this is what he says here. My face when I saw everyone crying, laughing faces, sitting around, he won't give you a title fight. Get to work and stop whining on social media. I want to be very clear before I kind of go off on this, okay? I really like Diego Lopes. He's a badass fighter. He's super fun to watch. He's one of my favorite guys in the featherweight division. It's must-see TV every single time. Good for you that you got the title shot, right? And obviously, I'm not faulting Diego Lopes in this situation. Every single fight since he's been in the UFC has been an amazing fight to watch. All of them. And again, you got to remember, he's willing to fight anybody. Remember when he was supposed to fight Ortega the first time. Ortega was ill or whatever, pulled out. It was supposed to be this guy, it was this weight, that weight. And he literally ended up taking Dan Ige on like a couple hour notice, man. So a guy that, is I'm fighting, I'm not fighting, I'm fighting, I'm not fighting. And then to go in there and ultimately fight and all these different things, I feel like is kind of how the UFC has looked at Diego Lopes as an anytime, anywhere, a guy that is willing to step in and do whatever. And then he kind of in a way risked his rankings against Jean Silva because Jean Silva, I don't want to say an undeserved opportunity because Silva's been on fire, knocking everybody out, submitted Bryce Mitchell. That was a pretty hyped up fight, right? So they basically gave Silva his opportunity at Noche UFC. And Diego goes out there, violent highlight reel spinning. I think it was a spinning elbow, right? That flatlined Jean Silva and got him out of there. Diego Lopes has been putting on amazing performances, man. And I'm happy that he's getting the title fight. 100% for him, at least. Like, I'm not shitting on him for getting the title fight. And I'm happy for, fighters that I like to get the title fight. I'm not hating on that. But what I am hating on is the fact that when I say that I'm happy he's getting the title fight, I'm happy because I like Diego Lopes that he's getting an opportunity, right? You're happy for fighters that you like to get opportunities like this. But at the end of the day, it's a disgrace and it's wrong, man. It's a disgrace and it's wrong. He literally, the fight before knocking out Jean Silva, which, by the way, Jean Silva was not at the top of the rankings in the weight class. That was more so Diego risking his ranking against a hyped up guy in Silva. So yeah, he took a risk, I guess you could say. But at the end of the day, the fight before that, it was a vacant featherweight title where he went in there, fought Volkanovski, and he got beaten pillar to post. What was it, 49-46? It was basically a masterclass by Volkanovski. Outside of Diego Lopes landing, I think it was one big right hand that dropped and hurt Volkanovski. Volk dominated the fight. And Volkanovski has not fought since. And now we're at the tail end of Volkanovski's career, right? There's rumors that Volkanovski is going to be in Sydney, right? It just feels like it's that perfect moment. Maybe the UFC's catching that win that Volkanovski's ready to hang him up. And they're like, no, we're going to throw Diego in there. We want this guy to go out there who's representing Brazil and Mexico to go out there and starch Volkanovski, become the champion. We know how the UFC is, man. They don't want these guys riding out on a high note. They don't, which is just crazy to me, man. Like what they tried to do to Nate was crazy. Was crazy. They tried to feed him to Khamzat Chimaev. That would have been horrible, man. Horrible. And an OG that's been a part of some of the biggest pay-per-views in the sport. Going in there fighting Leon Edwards like he did. Like Nate Diaz was one of those guys who was fighting all these people. And how do they pay him? They're like, how do they repay him? The last fight, we're going to feed you to an absolute monster in Khamzat Chimaev. This is what the UFC does, man. And we see this all the time where they feed the older guy with the name to the up-and-coming guys so that way they can basically make a name off them and kind of move forward with the weight class. This, to me, is so obvious what the UFC is doing. For Diego Lopes to say this, it just ticked me off, man. Like, because you basically were gifted and I don't even really want to say undeserved because he's been out there, putting on nice performances. So I don't know that maybe undeserved is the right word. There were other guys that were more deserving. And I don't think you could argue that. Lerone Murphy's been on a crazy win streak. Mobstar's been on a crazy win streak. But again, Mobstar hasn't been the most active. And then again, I've said this time and time before, guys. I already broke this down what Lerone Murphy had to say. It's a popularity contest, basically, right? And Lerone Murphy to take that fight against Aaron Pico on short notice the way he did, risking his top ranking against a guy who has not fought in the promotion, who the UFC is clearly gassing up. Dude, if you mean to tell me if Pico didn't go out there and beat Lerone Murphy, at least knock him out or something, they wouldn't have thrown him right into a title fight? They absolutely would have, in my opinion. 100%. And Lerone Murphy goes out there and brutally KOs him with a spinning back elbow or spinning elbow. And now you mean to tell me that, well, why would Lerone take that fight? High risk, high reward. I just feel like behind the scenes, the UFC probably led him to believe that, man, you go ahead and do this and you win this fight and steal this guy's hype. Maybe we'll just give you a title shot. I feel like that's the case because remember when Yair Rodriguez beat Patricio Pitbull and Yair's like, Hunter promised me. And that's why Yair was like, I'm getting the next title shot. So is it that crazy to think that the UFC might have said something along those lines to Lerone behind the scenes? I'm not too sure that it's not. I don't think that's crazy to say. And that's kind of my feeling towards it. That's been my gut feeling towards it, man. So again, great to see Diego Lopes getting a title fight because he's an exciting fighter. This, to me, is the UFC hoping that he goes out there and starches Alexander Volkanovski. And hopefully he could do what he did in the first fight, but actually end up finishing the job this time. Because Diego is very dangerous. Massive guy for the weight class, big power, dangerous submission game. And Volk is not the same guy. While I think Volk is still fast and still very good, He's not that prime Volkanovski that we know, because prime Volkanovski, I mean, he destroys Diego Lopes. I think he might have even finished Diego Lopes. I mean, I know Diego's tough as hell, but you saw the shots that Volk was landing on him in the first fight, man. And now another year goes by of Volkanovski sitting around right on the sideline, wanted to fight before year's end. Volkanovski had said, I thought it was going to be Lerone. I thought it was going to be Mobsar. Just crazy, man. There were guys that were more deserving of this opportunity, and it's a disgrace that he's getting the rematch, considering the fight was not close the first time. This is very obvious to me. The UFC is hoping that Diego Lopes knocks out Volk, and it's crazy. All that Volk has done in the sport, taking a short notice rematch against Islam Makhachev up a weight class, saving that card, which was, what was it, UFC 294? You know, defending the belt numerous times, being an active champion, taking on anybody, anytime, any place, giving Max Holloway 3 opportunities. Well, I mean, Max gave him the first one, but then 2 fights against Max Holloway after that. 3-0 on Holloway, even though the second fight was close, thought Max won. Still, the UFC, to me, has just always never treated Volkanovski the right way, in my opinion. For a guy that is literally one of the greatest of all time, the greatest featherweight of all time, one of the greatest mixed martial artists ever. And what they're going to do is put him in there against Diego Lopes once again, hoping that Diego can finish the job this time and become the champion. It's just crazy to see, man. It's absolutely crazy they're going to treat Volk like that. But I know it's not only Volkanovski that this happens to. We've seen fighters get this treatment. It's part of the game at the end of the day. We see the younger guys, you know, they feed the older name to the younger guy. And, you know, Diego's marketable, right? He's got a personality to him, right? The whole thing with Yair. And mark my words, man, or at least what I'm thinking right now, Diego Lopes goes out there and beats Volkanovski, Yair Rodriguez is going to fight Diego Lopes next for the belt. You mean to tell me that's not the fight that they're going to book next? I think it is. I think it is. So again, I like Diego Lopes a lot. It's great to see him get another title fight. The problem is there were guys that were more deserving, and you shouldn't be getting it right now, considering that you just got dominated by Volkanovski 49-46. I just don't get it. I don't get it, man. Well, I do get it from the business angle. From the business angle, I get it, but from sitting back looking at this from the fan perspective and what we want to see, this was not the fight. It was not the fight. You could still do Diego Lopes versus Yair Rodriguez. It's got the bad blood. It's a big fight. It should have been Volkanovski versus Lerone Murphy or Mobsar Evloev. Think about Volk's legacy as well. If Volk, you know, was like, man, I got 2 fights left. We want one of those to be Diego Lopes in a pointless rematch. Even if Volk goes out there and beats Lopes again, I mean, I rate that very high because of how dangerous Diego is. And to be fair, you know, I feel like Diego does beat Lerone, and I feel like he does beat Mobsar in a rematch. So, you know, I see these different angles, but at the end of the day, Lerone should have gotten his opportunity, took a risk against Pico, was on a crazy win streak, and give Volk, most importantly, give Volk the opportunity to add to his legacy and build his resume. Imagine if Volkanovski went out there, beat Lerone Murphy, and beat Mobsar Evloev, and say, yeah, he fought Diego Lopes, gets knocked out. At the end of the day, that would have been Lerone Murphy and Mobsar Evloev, and already had beaten Diego Lopes the first time on the resume of Volkanovski. Or even if he retired after that, which is what the UFC, man, we see this. They don't want these guys to really retire on top. They don't like to see it. They like to throw you in there against that next young, dangerous guy to make a name off you. So, and that's why I think John Jones was doing a lot of what he did with the Aspinall fight. He smelled that. So at the end of the day, yeah, he was dodging Tom Aspinall, but I understand what John was doing. At the end of the day, the more I think about it and see the way things have kind of played out and all the different things we've heard from the UFC behind the scenes, Ariel, John, at the end of the day, it's kind of that same energy to where the UFC's trying to feed you that, you know, of course they want the big fights. They want the marketable guys. They want the guys that are popular, like Diego's very popular. And I like Diego Lopes, man. I want to make that very clear. I really like Diego Lopes. He's one of my favorite fighters right now in terms of the action and overall. I like Diego. Not going to say undeserved because he's been, you know, putting in all this work. Again, it's not Diego's fault, but to tweet something out like this after you got the shot when you shouldn't have at this point in time, given that you had already said Lerone and Mobsar from Diego himself had said on, I think it was Ariel Helwani, that Lerone and Mobsar are guys that deserve the shot. And now you're going to, you know, put this on your social media. So whether it was him, his management, and at the end of the day, the other thing too, guys, I'm sick and it is becoming exhausting trying to solve the mystery of, is it the fighter? Is it their management? At the end of the day, I don't even care anymore. It's coming from your account. It's you as far as I'm concerned. I'm not playing this game anymore. Like Uncle I have these fighters, oh, well, they said this. Oh, it wasn't me. It was the manager. It came from your account. You are responsible for it. That's how I look at it at this point. It's not like, it's your management, it's your team. It's not like you were, someone got into your account that you don't know and you were hacked and they put out something that's different, obviously. But if it's your team posting stuff on your behalf, you're responsible for it. And to see him say something like this after you get a title opportunity when there are two guys that were more, it's not that Diego's undeserving, two guys that were more deserving. If Lerone and Movsar were not on these streaks and they had just lost a fight or they're in no man's land, whatever, and Diego's just kind of the only guy, okay. But to give him this rematch against Volkanovski, very inconsiderate to Volk, his legacy, all those kinds of things. Very frustrating, man, and that's why I say that it is an absolute disgrace because it's very obvious what the UFC is trying to do. They've just always kind of I don't want to say had it out for Volk, but they just haven't clicked with Volk or something, man. I don't get it. I don't get it. And to treat Volkanovski like this, I think it's horrible, man. So as much as I like Diego, I hope Volkanovski can kind of spoil their plans and go out there and get the win once again over Diego Lopes. So early thoughts, think Volk wins another decision, but it's going to be scary, man, because Diego almost knocked him out in the first fight. So we'll see what happens. We'll see kind of how it plays out. But here's my thoughts, man, on all these different things that we got going on. I think that I'll make a video here soon as well about Tom Aspinall, all the different things going on with him since he just posted a vlog recently. But if you guys enjoyed this video, do me a favor. Please give it a like. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you're new, if you could please sub it up, man, I would greatly appreciate it. See you next time.